It looks like we're continuing the series, Habits of Highly Effective Impressionists, and a couple more to go. I just wanted, before I go there, I'd like to thank our today's to thank our donors. Um, today's subject is problem solving, and I remember reading sometime not so long ago a modern artist. I mean, it's 30 years ago. A modern artist, an abstract painter, saying that painting had nothing to do with problem solving, and he was very adamant about, no, it's not about problem solving. But we found out differently, or at least we know differently. It was always problem solving from the point of view of a body of a certain kind of skill. By the way, even in abstract painting, I don't see any way in the world you haven't got problems to deal with, just because of the difficulty of creating unity on a canvas, if that's anything like your goal, is so problematical. But let me thank, as I started saying, let me thank Michelle W. and Catherine L. for those really kind gifts, donations to the video cause, which I hope we can continue for a while yet. I know I'm probably overwhelming you when you guys first see this website with several hundred videos you can watch. One of my goals in doing this the way I am, not very long segments and doing it off the cuff, is that I want you just to be able to hear a casual conversation about these things as they come up in various ways, sometimes with pictures in front of me, but this time with ideas. And so I just want to make it clear that the content is intended to be taken as a total package. I had someone say to me recently, he made a couple points to me, questions, and then he went back and watched a handful more videos, and he said, "Oh, and I don't know if he was apologetic, but he was saying he gathered what I was saying, that it wasn't limited to that one thing he heard in one video." So it's a pretty important thing for you to know. Sometimes, there wouldn't be time the way I'm talking to say all the things, to cover all aspects of any particular thing I'm saying in a single video. So that's another reason to hang in there for the rest of it. And I'm suggesting that you just sort of enjoy these things, get your head around them. It is a lot of hours, but it's probably so far, maybe it is, I was going to say maybe no more than a whole year worth of a single professor doing a half-hour lecture each time. But maybe it is a lot more than that. I don't know. Okay, so we're talking problem solving, and we're going to point out various aspects of problem solving's involvement in Impressionist painting. By the way, I have to say one of the difficulties of doing this is there's nobody sitting in front of me. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm talking to a blank room, and I find that really does something to I was going to say to disintegrate my thinking, but it doesn't do anything to keep me focused. One of these days, I'm going to figure out some way to get one of you guys to be in the room, maybe on a Zoom or something like that, as I've suggested before. I haven't gotten anywhere at all trying to figure out how to do that, but it might be useful with your questions and things. And again, I haven't been looking at any questions. I'll probably wait till the end of all these this series, which is from here just one more. This is coming out Thursday, I think, and then probably Sunday will be the last one. Then I'll have to go in there and start digging around to see what your guys' comments are. And I'm hoping you'll give me feedback regarding any parts of what I'm talking about, or just other aspects of it from where you're coming from that we can discuss to give clarity to what we're doing. But my goal here, of course, keep remembering, is to try to give some clarity to a person who works in the ocular appearance-based model instead of the knowledge and constructing model. And I'm going to give you a quote from Sargent to talk about that in just a second, that somebody just sent to me, and I really want to appreciate that. I hope I can remember who sent that. Oh, my goodness. Well, maybe as I get to it, I'll remember his name. Just came in an email this past week. Anyway, but among the books you might pick up in terms of problem solving is The Art of Clear Thinking. I recommend, and this is by Rudolf Flesch, who writes very readable books. He wrote a powerful book called Why Johnny Can't Read, and he's describing the American culture of teaching reading. This total, it just sort of uses in a non-systematic way some phonics. When it's a phonetic system, they don't teach phonics. There's 44 sounds in the English language. Rudolf Flesch is saying that's why reading in this country has gone so far downhill. And fascinating story in itself, but that's not my, I'm just saying that because I read that before I ever just thought to make a video, but I probably even read it before I was even a painter. I probably read it way back. I think this is something from the 60s maybe or something. But the art of clear thinking is also in that category. There's a very number of useful things in there, but getting for a young person to get your head around your thinking skills. I mean, I remember Gamble said something to me once, and I've quoted it to you before. He said, you have to think this through. And that was a term I'd never heard anybody use before, which is fascinating. Think it through. But there are many aspects to thinking. And everything we do in painting, in Impressionist painting, is we have a problem to solve in the first place. We have to figure out how to get this body of visual data onto a canvas in a way that shows with truth, with authority, with conviction, with beauty, what it was that excited us about that visual impression. And that's a problem. And all of you know that, right? That's a difficult thing to do. And and it's fraught with problems, as it were. But the process itself has many moments when you have to figure out something. And so getting your head around I recommend reading any books you can find. If you can find one or two on its own logic that you can read through, problem solving that you can read through. I think I read Applied Imagination. I don't read these books hard. I read them in a way that I glean them. I read those things in a way that I can pick up, and I keep moving through it, looking for, what the model of that is, probably as much as anything. But and I think I've mentioned to you before poetic diction, and the talk about meaning in relation to words in a book that C.S. Lewis recommended for people who want to learn to think. So let's get on with this. This one, I want to thank you for this, and oh boy, and I apologize. I'm hoping I come up with your name before this is over. The gentleman who sent this to me very kindly by email this past week brought back to my memory something I'd totally forgotten, and that is that Sir Edmund Goss, who sat for Sargent, quoted Sargent describing what he was doing in his way of working. And I quote this just for the purposes of you understanding what problem solving is to us, to the Impressionists. But here, read this. One of Sargent's theories at this time was that modern painters made a mistake in showing that they know too much about the substance they paint. Sargent thought that the artist ought to know nothing whatever about the nature of the object before him, but should concentrate all his powers on a representation of its appearance. Now, is that not exactly what the Boston School is about? The picture was to be a consistent vision, a reproduction of the area filled by the eye. So that's what I always show you, that little framed area. Hence, in a very curious way, the aspect of a substance became much more real to him than the substance itself. The aspect, that's the appearance of so all this stuff, trees, woods, people, all that stuff. But one of the things that came out of that, though, is that we began to realize what kind of an art this was. And so that was the great bonus. But meaning it was not an art of things, but it's an art of color relations and so on, Let's not go through that. You know what I mean when I say that. So let's get quickly through the several of these points. Now, this is just to try to sort of wet your whistle, wet your appetite for thinking, for the thinking process. But the first point I make is the need to know how to break a bundle of sticks. Now, Gamble asked me that, and I've mentioned it to you before, but I'd never heard the riddle, and I think he even named who it was who offered the riddle. Some Greek thinker. As I believe he said it, but I've forgotten the guy's name. You guys look that up. But the answer to the riddle is one stick at a time. And if you see that when you're trying to solve a problem and you have an area in the canvas that's off, if you can figure out what stick it is that a color problem? Is that a shape problem? Is that a size problem? And what kind of a problem is that? If you can isolate that to the one stick, you can correct it for sure. So Bobby Jones says, when I think about, he's a golfer, and I've mentioned him to you before as well. When I think about three things, I make a bad shot. When I think about two things, I'm making a better shot. But when I think about one thing, I make a good shot. And by the way, I don't trust my quote to be precise, but that's a golfer. And then I use the word windows here because I'm referring to that like in a computer. When you're looking at a computer, when you're the drawing program is a window that's just drawing, and then you click on something in there and it'll be just line, or it'll be a octagonal shape or something like that. It's a rectangle, whatever. So each time you click on one of those, you get this whole separate group of things that do what they do. And my point to you is that all of painting is like that in the world visual, in the world of aspects. What are the values? Can you get up a values window and solve the problem of values when you have a values problem, and isolate the problem and solve the problem? So those are sort of three different things you might want to think about when you're trying to solve problems. Now, right in the middle of everything we do when you're painting, you've already covered the canvas, perhaps. Undoubtedly, defining the back straggler is a huge thing. Finding the thing that's least like. Now, I've said to you before, usually the thing that's least like is the easiest to correct, right? The thing that just jumps at you. But it's not easy to correct if you don't know how to say, well, what about that area is wrong? You can easily find a spot that just looks least like. Now, most of us get so far into a painting, we can't figure out what's least like, because everything is least like. Everything is so messed up. So if you'll start applying this earlier, right, finding this early on when you have just a couple different notes out there, adjust these notes to each other, and then when you get a third one, and by the time you get a handful of them out there, there's this pause moment where you really better look it over, and you better correct that one that's least like in relation to all the others. And it always means in relation to all the others. In this case, or the way I said it is the back straggler is that thing which least like when you look at the big impression. So if you're not taking in the whole, that's a problem-solving thing, to take in the whole and find that one thing that's least like. And that last week, I believe I talked about taking it easy. And that applies here, right? That should be the easiest thing for you to do. Don't get ambitious about what you're going to do next and next and next, which is what I'm saying right now. Avoid deciding what you're going to get right first. Don't prioritize drawing. But I'm saying all those things as advice against, to point you to just work on the back straggler. You can handle that, provided you can isolate what that is about that needs to be corrected. Asking questions is a big deal. Every time you're trying if you've made an angle, just even if you have a couple points, and you want to know if they line up right. Remember the sergeant talking about points, angles, point, and the angle they make between them. If you want to know if that angle is right, you can ask the angle. You can look at the angle and you can say to the angle, should you be more vertical? And usually, it's a funny thing to say. But in placement on the page, you could, in relation to the whole, should you be more left? Should you be more right? Should you be more vertical? Should you be more rich in relation to the whole? And I find that puts that question before you in a clean way, in a simple way too, because it's only an on-off thing, right? It's just should you be richer? Should you be less rich? That kind of thing, which is just a yes or it's a this or that. I'm always saying avoid essay questions when you're trying to figure things out in this thing. And you'll see answers. And then use a trial and error strategy. That's the heuristic thing we talked about some weeks ago. But the trial and error strategy requires that you try things on the canvas, right? The whole idea is to propose to project a possible solution, a color, or set up a color and try to make it as like as you can, but just set a color up there, and then set another color up there. And before you know it, there'll be no decision to be made. You'll know what the right color is if you're looking relationally. So using trial and error is the fourth one. And that for now is all I have for you. But when you do trial and error, remember that your trial and error is a search for a solution to something, right? And so with all these things here, if you're not an impressionist, these things don't apply, or may apply, but who knows how. But this just gets your head around one idea, though, and that is going back to Rudolf Flesch, getting you to learn to think and solve problems. Okay, and because you're going to need to do that. Painting is fraught with it, right? All right. So that'll be it for today. And the last one is coming right up. And that's going to be one that you're probably all waiting for in a sense. It's the one about methods. And that's going to be a fairly long one. So let me get out of this one and get on with it for the next one.